Okay, no worries.
And you are good.
Hi. So my name's Kavita Tanna, and I'm currently based in London, England. I am the Deputy Director for Inspire Citizens. And through Inspire Citizens, we work with different schools, really with the entire stakeholders community. So we work all the way from admin, parents, educators, and of course, students, just thinking about what is the why for their learning. So I'm excited to talk to you about it all today.
Fantastic. So, how did you get involved with Inspire Citizens?
Well, it's quite a sweet story actually, because myself, Steve Sostak, and Aaron Moniz, we were all based out in Beijing. Myself and Aaron, we both got there in 2015. And we just happened to have mutual friends. And so some mutual friends of mine and Steve kept saying to me, oh, you should meet Steve Sostak. You guys are going to get on really well. And then the same people were saying to him, oh, you should meet Kavita, you guys are going to get on really well. And then eventually, it was actually a drama teacher at the school he was teaching at that was running an evening workshop. And she invited Steve to run one of the workshops. And when we met, it was literally a kindred spirit moment. Like, yes, now we know why everyone's been talking about each other to each other. And so then he invited me to come and attend some of the weekend workshops that him and Aaron were running with Inspire Citizens, the company that they co-founded. And as I was attending the weekend workshops, I realized that they basically found the answers that I was looking for, because for as long as I can remember, even as a student myself, I've questioned educational systems both in England and other experiences that I've had. And yeah, I really feel that together we're sort of really closing the gaps on some of the things that I wish could be different about the way that education is delivered right now.
And what are some of those ways or those areas you want to see the gap close in education? What made you kind of question some of these old practices and way of doing things?
So I think it sort of begins really for me from the point of view that what is education? What does it mean to learn? And for me, as someone that's sort of always been interested in reading a lot, the power of language is really, really important. And so when we think about the word education, I was recently, had it explained to me that education comes from the word educare, which means to draw out, to call out something that's already within us, basically. So for me, if we're thinking about human beings and who we are fundamentally, if we accept that we are basically loving and social human beings, what does that mean in terms of our education and the way that we learn? Well, in my opinion, it means that we need to be thinking about what we actually care about as the starting point for our learning. So if we can really be engaged by the learning environment, which includes the teacher, but also includes the physical space, or whatever is happening in that learning environment. If we can really be inspired to care about something, and what would we most naturally care about? Well, as living beings, we would care about other living things, right? Like the planet, animals, and so on. And so for me, it really resonated with me when I realized that in the work with Inspire Citizens, we're thinking about things like, for example, the 17 Sustainable Development
Mhm.
Goals. We've got over 190 countries that have managed to agree on these 17 things and set a target for it for 2030. Like, that's a pretty incredible feat. And so, if we're going to be educating our children, surely we should be educating them on how to achieve that target or those targets. And we should be thinking about, what do the kids really care about in their day-to-day lives, and engaging them in meaningful, authentic, relevant ways.
And so, what are ways using your SDGs that you use to educate? What are some of those go tos that you like to go to?
So we use a sort of quite detailed toolkit depending on what age group we're speaking with. And so, you know, if I talk through, for example, the tools that we've used with parents and as a launch toolkit when we first, you know, engage with schools. So the kind of things that we look at are, as I said, you know, like what we basically care about. So we often run a simulation that we call the global mall. And in that, we're really sort of trying to replicate what happens in real life. We don't get to choose which family we're born into in terms of wealth, in terms of location, all of these different things. So what we do is that we randomly allocate you know, dollar amounts to the participants in the room, and we give them a worksheet that they work through to basically choose what level of access do they have to food, water, heat and fuel, and then some more what fall into luxury items, unfortunately, like education and healthcare, and then further luxury items from that. And so by doing that, the participants really get to feel what it's like to perhaps not be in the position that they're in at the time, because a lot of the schools that we work with are international private schools. And so for a lot of students and the parents, it's a new experience to think, well, I don't have the money for education, or I don't have the money for healthcare during that experience. And so we sort of talk through and walk through what it felt like, why you made the decisions that you made, and all of these kind of things. And so then we start to get into, okay, so how is this reflected in the real world, and how do we have the extremes of wealth and poverty that we have in the world right now, but also the people that are in the middle? What can we do to support each other? And so we get into thinking about things like, oh, okay, so if we're looking at our personal well-being, how balanced are we in our personal well-being and our self-care? If we're thinking about our local community, there's an organization called compasseducation.org that have created a tool that we use to really assess how are we being sustainable in our use of nature, the way that we manage our economy, society, and well-being. So we have different tools in this way that we can use to really support the introduction to leading towards the sustainable development goals, and thinking about, okay, well, now that we've sort of, you know, thought about ourselves, we've thought about our local community, let's think on a more global level and engage with the SDGs. And we often do that in a way where we get down into the targets. So there's 17 goals and 169 targets. And so we offer the opportunity to do a gallery walk, and people really just naturally have an affinity towards a particular goal, and then getting down to the specific targets. And then we bring it back to self and ask the participants to think about, okay, well, what talents, skills, interests do you already have? And how could they be put into action to benefit one of these targets that you've chosen? And so we call that our talents plus targets equals vocation. And that actually is what led Steve to create Inspire Citizens. He went through that exercise for himself and realized that Inspire Citizens needed to come out into the world. And I'm really happy to be part of that with him and Aaron together.
In fact, so that's fantastic. So how has your growth been from when you guys kind of came together and launched this to where it is now? How has the response been from students, from teachers, and from school leaders?
Well, it's been amazing. We have been so blessed because we've had the support of a particular school in South Korea, the Seoul Foreign School, have supported us by having us in the school for 50 days per year over a 3-year period. And they are really looking to become what we would call the Sustainability Living Lab, so the example school, the model school for other schools internationally. And the response has just been amazing with all the other schools that we're working with across China, other parts of Southeast Asia. We've also engaged with schools in Europe, and we're also engaging with schools in the US right now, where students are the most engaged that they've ever been, according to the feedback from teachers. The sort of empowerment that they're seeing, you know, the self-empowerment, the idea of collaboration coming to life as they work through their project-based learning, the just knowing, even at the age of 3, that they are making a positive difference. We organized with one of the schools to have an activist in residence. Her name's Song Chao Yao, and she was going to be visiting the school for 2 days. And in preparation for that, myself and Aaron visited the school and spoke to the teachers about how they might want to uplift the fact that she was going to be talking about replanting trees in the Amazon rainforest. And it was such a powerful moment for us when we met with a 3-year-old who explained that she was making a tree out of reusable materials that she could then sell at the student market, so that they could raise money to give to Song Chao so that she could plant trees in the Amazon rainforest. That child was totally empowered with the idea that she could make an actual difference in the world, in a part of the world that really, she only got to learn about because of this experience. So it's pretty amazing to know that we're having that much of an impact.
That's fantastic. And I know coming into this school year, I had never heard of SDGs. And so I had a colleague tell me about them. I've done, homework on them. I've talked with people about them, and just ask someone who's conscious of the world and, and just the outdoors. I think it's just a wonderful thing. So I've started to use them, slowly into my classes. And you mentioned how you have done these with private schools, and you've done some work in Europe and some in the United States. How are you going to make that pitch, or if you've done it already, how have you made that pitch to public schools, say, in the United States?
Well, because of everything that's happening in the world right now, we are all in different parts of the world. So Aaron is based in Seoul now with Seoul Foreign School. I'm in London in England, and Steve is actually in Chicago. So he has the sort of right time, like obviously being on the right time zone and everything, to be able to engage with lots of educators actually in the US. And there's a couple that have actually been proactively working with him, inviting him into their Zoom classrooms so that they can actually go through some of the tools that I described earlier. So it's pretty exciting to see that, through our Twitter Professional Learning Network, that we've been able to make more and more connections with public schools and be able to support educators directly with engaging with, as you mentioned, the Sustainable Development Goals, but also our whole empathy to impact model of really sort of starting with what the students care about and authentically getting them to think about how they're going to be able to create an impact, a positive impact on whatever it is that they care about. That project cycle pathway has actually enabled the teachers to see a real uplifting of engagement with the standards. And so they're actually seeing that students are becoming more independent with their research and with our guidance, sort of doing more meaningful research. And then also, wanting to amplify their literacy skills, amplify their social studies knowledge and understanding, and all of these different things. Another way that we're engaging with public schools is that I've been involved in supporting the social and emotional well-being for educators in a school in Chicago. And so that project for me is really important because I really believe that in order for us to do meaningful work in the world, our own cup needs to be filled, right? It's others really benefit from us the best when we are able to give from a cup that's already filled. And so what we're doing is 3 times a week, we're spending 25 minutes with the educators really to encourage them, motivate them, inspire them in some way. And we've coined it the alphabetic survival guide to COVID-19, just to kind of give it a little bit of a lighter touch and a bit of fun. So it really sort of starts with me being me and trying to bring the high energy and positivity to the room, and then we'll get into sort of having someone speak to them for 14 minutes about whatever is true for them, and I'm excited to be able to say that you're going to be one of those people. So yeah, we're very excited to have you on board.
Absolutely. I can't wait for it. I love SEL and just how important it really is. in our schools, and we're going to see more and more of it as the years go on. And so I really try and practice that with my students as well. So with your work with Inspire Citizens, how have you grown both as a professional and as a person?
That's a beautiful question. I would have to, so I'll start with it in the order that you brought it up. So professionally, one of the things that I would say is that with both Steve and Aaron's support, I've been like I've had my eyes open to so many different ways of thinking and approaching sort of learning. You know, it's really been an incredible journey to be with them, because you know, I spoke to a friend of mine recently about, you know, like slaying your lane, and I feel like I've sort of shifted lanes like quite dramatically in the last 6 months or so, since I joined the guys full time. And so, you know, for me, it's been a lot about the reading material that we've engaged with, the people that we've been engaging with around the world, some really influential people, you know, people like Dr. Lindsay Portnoy for her design thinking, you know, Zoe Wheel for solutionaries work. There's just so many amazing people out there that, you know, I probably should be mentioning more, but you know, I feel a little bit on the spot right now. But there's just so many amazing people out there doing such incredible things to try and, you know, have a positive impact on the world. And so, yeah, professionally, I just feel that my game has been lifted, you know, so high. And actually, one of my family members is getting to benefit from that, because I'm actually tutoring one of my cousin's 8-year-old sons, and yeah, we're sort of working through the different learning models that I've described to you. We started this week, and already the parents have told me that they've seen such a transformation in him. So for me, that's what it's all about. That's my why right there, right? To hear that he feels so much more confident in himself, he feels more knowledgeable about the world, and just, yeah, it's just such a great feeling. Personally, I would say that my growth has just, I guess the thing that I would want to share is that everyone that's in my life that speaks to me regularly always comments on, you're always such high energy, you're always so happy, you're always so excited. And like, and you know, I am pretty much a happy person generally, but I think it's like a constant state for me now, because I guess when you know that you're fulfilling your purpose, and it really is a passion of mine to educate. I've been, you know, fortunate to be trusted with tutoring people since I was about 12 or 13 years old. And so, you know, this has been something that I've been wanting to do and engage in for a long, long time now. I'm probably aging myself quite dramatically by saying that, but it's just, you know, it is something that it's a heart driven thing. You know, it really is my passion to be involved in the learning journey of for myself and for others. So yeah, I'd say that there's been a lot of growth in both areas.
Fantastic. I love it. I love it. It's great. You know, I kind of go by the old saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And fortunately, I think both of us have that in common. So, you know, it's really cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned SEL. Where have you seen that grown in the past few years, and why is it important to you?
So social emotional learning is something that I sort of place at the starting point of any learning journey, right?
Mhm.
So you'll see sort of over here that that's sort of half of a well-being sort of circle, if you like. And so there's 8 parts in that, and the 8 parts sort of break down, if you like, what it means to be well. So inevitably people think of their physical wellness, right? Like, am I eating right? Am I exercising? All of these kind of things, am I in a safe space? That kind of thing. But really, if we're thinking about social emotional learning and we're thinking about learning overall, we really need to be considering that social aspect, that emotional aspect, but also the mental, the occupational, the environmental, the spiritual, all of these different elements of our well-being. And the reason why I think that's so important is because if we can find balance in those areas, then we are more open, our heart is more open to learning new things. That idea of sort of, like I say, with educare, meaning to draw out what's already within you. Like, if we feel restricted in some way and we're not physically able to do the things we want to do, or mentally we've put up barriers or something like that, then it's much harder for us to open our hearts up to learning new things and to asking questions and being curious about the world around us, because inevitably we will become introspective and just want to deal with whatever problems or difficulties or barriers or obstacles we're seeing. And so for me, it's really sort of about social emotional learning is really about trying to look over, that fence that we might have built up, or try and make a little dent in it. Like, it doesn't have to be flipping tables about it. We have our stories. People go through difficult things. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I just would like to be able to encourage people to, as I say, to peer over it, or to like, look around the side and slowly as they sort of engage with the wider world, be able to break some of that down. And there is a lot of progress being made. You asked me what progress I've seen in the last sort of few years, and I think that people are starting to understand that. I feel like, and I don't know whether this is just the circles that I'm moving in, but from sort of seeing what's happening in the news a lot more in England than I have done in the last 5 years, because I was out in China, I do feel like that people are starting to have a bit more of a conversation about how this is making people feel, what's happening right now in the world, and encouraging people to be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit braver in expressing their emotions. And hopefully these kind of conversations are going to continue, because that really, I think, is going to help us to achieve the breakthrough moments. If we keep talking about it, if we keep having the conversations about what it means to be well, what it means to be socially well, what it means to be emotionally well. And so and for sure, like, we are always encouraging the schools that we work with and anyone that we're in contact with to keep talking about it and acknowledging that if we're well, if we feel good within ourselves, then we're gonna learn better. It's just a simple equation.
Very simple. And so, what experience can you go back where you assisted someone who may have been struggling social and emotionally, where you were able to help them? What experience can you go back to and recall?
So there's a myriad of examples I can give in my heart and mind right now. So I'm just trying to think, what can I describe so that that person who might watch it doesn't feel like, oh, but I think the big sort of point that I would want to make in this forum is that the focus that we've taken as Inspired Citizens, on collective well-being, largely came from when I initially started working with Inspired Citizens full time. And the reason why I want to draw on that experience is because we were in our main partner school, and we were going through that Compass tool. And as I mentioned, we look at the sustainability of anything through that tool, but in particular we were looking at the sustainability of the school itself. And when we were thinking about the connection with nature and economy and society, everything was fairly neutral. But when we got to the point of well-being, that's when I really felt that the students were like, wow, we can talk about this, we can talk about how we really feel in school about different things and different issues that we're facing as teenagers and things like that. And for me to be sort of over the shoulder of one of them, and for her to ask me, so can I really just talk about this like openly, was really a big moment for her to have an adult say to her, yes, you can express yourself. You can be completely open with however you're feeling about anything that's going on in school, you know? And for her, you know, she was experiencing a little bit of difficulty in understanding why certain conversations weren't being had openly, for example, around the LGBTQ community. She was struggling with, you know, the students feeling a certain amount of pressure to achieve highly in exams, but then, you know, it meant that she felt that social relationships were being left on the side. And so, you know, it was really incredible for her to see her response, but then also for her to go running to her friends that were in other groups and say, we can talk about anything, anything. These guys will let us say anything. You know, like, and so, like I say, for me it really does come back to, you know, what is the difference for us as human beings compared to other living things? Well, it's our capacity to use language, it's our capacity to engage in conversation, and also our capacity to reflect on those conversations that we have. And so, you know, if we can keep doing that, that's where we're going to keep finding the breakthroughs. If we can keep reflecting, keep moving forward, keep having those conversations. So yeah, so I think that was a real pivotal moment for me.
Fantastic. And do you think schools are doing enough to have these conversations? Are we educating our teachers to facilitate these conversations? Is there more improvement we can be doing?
I'm going to have to bring that point directly to the context of the world that we're living in right now, because you know, we've both met on Twitter, and you know, my feed is very busy these days, you know, a lot busier than I've ever seen it before. And I've not been active for that long, but I am seeing a shift. I am seeing a lot more teachers talking about how much they appreciate that, because of the way that, you know, schools kind of suddenly shut down for some people, you know, there wasn't really much of a lead into it, that they are having to adapt and be more flexible and really think through how are they going to manage their engagement with their students in a meaningful way in this online learning world. And a lot of them are starting to say on a more regular basis that I really loved just picking up the phone and speaking to my student, and, you know, and observing that they never really had a conversation with that student on a one-to-one basis before. You know, really sort of thinking about, you know, what Zoom offers breakout rooms, and how that's felt to use, you know, like as a tool, really thinking about what does it mean to ask their student how are they feeling today, and to hear them, and really listen, and to actually make a decision in that moment that whatever agenda they had when they started that class, or whatever, you know, whatever standards they wanted to cover, or whatever it was, that like, actually, maybe right now we just need to talk. Maybe we just need to share how we're really feeling about this. Maybe we just need to be there for each other and reconnect a little, you know. That reconnection piece is so powerful. You know, it's actually, well, you know, I guess I might as well make this announcement here, that it's actually, you know, reconnecting is actually the title of my book I'm
Very
writing.
nice.
And so, so yeah. So yeah, so as I say, you know, it's it'll be a while coming, you know, it's
Hmm.
very much at the beginning stages.
Yeah,
But I cannot emphasize enough how much, you know, how important I think it is that we reconnect with each other.
absolutely. And first of all, congrats. I cannot wait to buy it once it's ready to hit the shelves. And I'm going to give a spoiler alert as well. I haven't started on my book yet, but when I do, I'm going to be pretty basic. I'm going to call it We Are One Team, and just kind of go into what that means and examples. So we both have spoiled the big news coming down the line. So big things happening.
Yes, well, this is a great forum in which to do that, because the
Yeah,
two are so in line with each other, right?
yeah.
We are one team and reconnecting. Come on.
Absolutely. All right. Now, your experience is in early childhood. Am I correct?
Yes. So I'm trained in England. You have to choose. Are you going to be a primary teacher? Are you going to be a secondary teacher?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I chose primary. Hmm.
Okay. So, what drew you to working with primary? What is it, the development that you can do with that age group? Is it how inquisitive those students are? Because, in the state that's elementary, my mom is a retired elementary teacher. They want to please, please, please their teacher and so anxious about the world. What drew you to that age group?
Well, I'm privileged to be a member of quite a large family. My dad is one of 7. My mom is one of 9, but also she has 6 cousins that live in England. Most of my mom's family is actually in the US. And so with such a large family from my parents' generation, they've all had 1 or 2 kids or 3 kids, some of them. So you can imagine that, I've always been around young kids, whether they were my younger cousins or they were, my older cousins' kids, if you like. And so the connection that I felt with the little ones is real. It's the most fun that I have in my week. Because we used to get together every weekend. We're now doing that through Zoom. But yeah, it's always been a part of my life and really always brought me a natural joy, that to know that, as I say, having been tutoring in whatever guise it was from the young age of 12 to 13, that when I did decide to leave financial services where I was prior to becoming an educator, it was just obvious to me that that's where I would go, that I would choose elementary or primary. I think you're right. I think it is a lot to do with their natural inquisitiveness. It is a lot to do with, the idea that they do want to please you as an adult. But for me, I think it's also having that chance to really bring that positive energy to them, to really sort of, because one of the words that I've been using a lot recently is, how intentional are we being? And for me, that's a really important piece of being an educator, intentionally creating that learning environment, intentionally engaging with what's happening in the world. And most of my time in early education teaching was around recognizing that as human beings, we intuitively understand what it means to be in the season of autumn or in the season of spring, or, like to really sort of engage with that in a natural way, and to guide the learning towards, embracing that natural intuitive understanding of where we are in the world and how we fit into the world. So yeah, influencing the younger minds is definitely where my heart's at. But I have enjoyed engaging with older students in my new role with Inspire Citizens, as I mentioned, on the social emotional side, and in other projects that I've been, privileged to be a part of, with CAS, and which is community action and service projects, and lots of other things, student leadership programs, and so many things.
Very nice. Now, you are doing your gift of reconnecting. So, how do you find
Yes.
balance in your life?
So it's funny you should bring that up. So in terms of finding balance in my life, actually, I'd have to draw back to this well-being circle and say that, like, to be honest, that's really sort of been my major focus, because I've been, working from home and unable to do my normal work since the beginning of the year. So, I think the US sort of started closing schools down maybe 3 weeks ago now, maybe 4 weeks in some
Yeah,
districts.
this is
But
week 3 for me. So, and we're out to the end of May.
right.
So,
Right. Mm. So for me, the change in working methods and patterns sort of started a little bit earlier, and I would say that at the beginning, there was a little bit of that sort of, oh, I'm home, I can just be in sweatpants all day. And oh, I'm home with my mom and she's a really good cook, so I can just eat all day.
Yeah.
But actually, I realized that letting some of my other practices of exercising, eating healthily, gratitude journaling specifically, all of these kind of things are so important for me to be the way that I want to be, the way that I want to present myself to myself and to the world. And so it's been really important to get that balance again. And the gift of reconnecting is really going to be geared towards supporting educators, parents, whoever it is that signs up, to taking a moment, just really sort of taking that pause that a lot of people are considering this time to be, and recognizing all of the things that you do have already to be grateful for, and then to build on those things. um, one of the greatest things that we do in our work is that we look to multiply the talents of others, and in doing so we also want to really recognize what our individual talents and skills are, and also what our passions and interests are, so that we can build on those. And so it's really, really important to, as you say, to maintain that balance. And I now work out every day, from 4:30 to 5:30. I make sure I eat more healthily. I'm journaling every day. I'm back to doing all the balanced activities with my spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, and so on work. And honestly, engaging with people like you really fills my cup. And for me, that is part of my sort of, it's part of my spiritual experience, but also part of my occupational well-being. And it's really just a great way to be.
Fantastic. So what are what are the biggest things that you are grateful for?
uh every day I'm grateful for my parents.
Mm.
Every day. They yeah they are really up there for the most incredible people. I feel so blessed that that I have them in my life. And inevitably my brother, sister-in-law, and my nephew are straight after them. They're just such a special part of my life, and the joy that they give me. I mean, when I've been reconnecting with old friends that I haven't spoken to in a while, they've sort of been asking me what it's like to be home after 5 years.
Mhm.
And I said, it's just like it was when I was younger. Like, we find ourselves in hysterical laughter. And I swear, if anyone was to walk into the room and say, what's so funny, we wouldn't be able to tell you. It's like, we have these like inside joke moments, and I just don't know how to explain it. So and then, as I say, soon after that comes my extended family. But beyond that, I would say that I'm in gratitude for myself and my capacity for self-growth, and investing in myself and my learning, because that's something that I never really considered as a gift before. It's not something that I thought was especially unusual, or you know something that not everyone does. But I've learned recently that having that motivation for personal growth, and having that desire to move forward in your own life and develop your sense of balance, your own well-being, to take ownership and responsibility, to engage in collaboration with others in order to enhance that sense of responsibility that you've taken for yourself, the power of reflection. All of these things apparently aren't everyone's way of being. And so I find myself in a constant state of gratitude that is the way that I want to be, and the way that just am. Yeah, it's an I am statement.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. If you can look into the crystal ball, okay, where do you see yourself growing the next 5 to even 10 years from now? or where do you envision yourself or hope to be?
Um, I think that it's difficult for me to disconnect that from what I hope for the world,
Mhm.
because I'll be moving in that world, right? And so I'd have to start from the point of the state of hope that I'm in now for the way that the world is going to move forward in the future. Because, you know, we're talking a lot at the moment about being in a state of crisis. You know, that people are talking about the chaos that they're experiencing right now. And for me, that's actually provided a massive opportunity for creativity. I've actually been working with a good friend of mine about that precise thing, that I'd started 2020 with the word, you know, the word of 2020 to be create. And when everything happened that happened at the beginning of the year with the world, with COVID-19, but also unfortunately, I lost one of my aunts to cancer. Um, that creative juice just wasn't flowing, you know, it just wasn't happening for me. But in the last 4 to 5 weeks, it's really been, you know, that's my way of being, sort of thing. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess, you know, if I can keep having these kind of conversations and engaging with conversations with people like I was privileged to do yesterday with Fielding International, and continue sort of talking about a world where education is transformed in the ways that we've talked about, you know, in my work with Inspire Citizens, then the crystal ball paints a pretty beautiful picture of, you know, me really, again, continuing to live in my purpose, in my passion, continuing to engage in meaningful conversations with people that are real change makers like yourself, and just really sort of seeing how the youth, you know, the people that are younger than us are inspired to really create a world that's going to be sustainable, you know, for the long term, that's really going to be somewhere where people are happy to live and happy to be in relationship with each other, and happy to just, I guess, in a state of joy as much as possible. Because I do recognize that I am in that privileged position of finding myself in pretty much a constant state of joy.
Mm. All right. Last one I'm going to give you. Okay. What does "We Are One Team" mean to you?
uh, it's it's really the connection piece, you know, for someone to say we're in this together, for someone to say, you know, we are all valued for exactly who we are, and that we bring value to a team. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that someone can say to another human being, you know, to have that acknowledgement. I mean, one of the most beautiful definitions of love that I've come across recently is where the speaker, his name's Maturana, describes love as um, accepting the legitimacy of the other in coexistence with oneself. I'll say that again: to accept the legitimacy of the other in coexistence with oneself. I mean, that is what a team should be, right?
Absolutely.
And to say that we are one team, yeah, it's just the most beautiful thing. I really feel that if all of mankind could adopt that way of being, you know, that the world would just be so fulfilled and just, yeah, just so much more beautiful than it already is.
All right. The world is very beautiful, and you got me thinking, what are ways we can continue to unite all of us?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that we're starting to do that in some way, right? Because here I am in London, England. There you
Hmm.
are in the US of A.
Yeah. The
You
middle
know, there's a
America.
whole
Yeah.
in between us right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, I think the more that we can do things like this, the more united people will become. Because there's a ripple effect, right? You know, everyone in my circle is now going to know about you
Hmm.
because of of the experience I've had with you. And the more we can create those connections, the more connected people will become.
And I tell you what, I just, when I talk with people, when I learn, when I grow, there's just so much passion, there's so much energy, and just so much vibe for people that want to do good. Okay. And you really want to surround yourself with that group of people. And I really do believe it. The places that I've worked, when we're all working together, great things happen. And I really believe all of us working together can really have a tremendous impact on what we're doing in the world. I really do believe it.
Yeah. As you say, being one team and having the same mission and vision, that's the way it needs to be. And I don't think it's that difficult to define that mission and vision. Not really. We all want to be well, collective well-being. We all want to, live in a world that's going to last and keep providing for us, the way that we've been blessed to be provided for. Well, that's the sustainable development of the world. We want to be engaged in our social and emotional and ethical, intelligence and growth. All of these things are really sort of, we want social justice. We don't want to be discussing the inequities of the world anymore. Why is that even a thing? So I really feel that it's pretty easy to define that same mission and vision.
It really is. And when we're all pushing forward in the same direction, more people are going to hop on and be a part of it. So we're off to a lot of really good things, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Okay. So this has been a wonderful conversation. I have loved everything that you've said with Inspire Citizens, with SCL, early childhood. It's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure and an honor, actually.
Absolutely. All right, we'll go off the record right now. I'll ask you a couple more follow-ups and we'll go from there, all right?
No worries.